because the truth was my body's been trying to communicate to me my whole life around boundaries, around telling the truth or my truth, speaking up. And when I started to track all my injuries from birth until that point, when I started to look at whether it was surgery or stitches or getting strep throat, and if I looked at the literal function of the body part and what was happening in my life outside of my body, I started to find these trends.
2, 1, 0.
Hi, and welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. This is your host, Orion. Thank you so much for joining us to explore the teachers of psychedelics. In this episode, we're going to learn about psychedelic, who are they good for, the light side and the shadow side of psychedelics, who would you take a journey with, and why you need to really be careful with whom you are taking this journey with, and protect yourself, how to protect yourself, how to protect your energy, and so much more. I have with me the lovely Kole Whitty. She's a former Miss Utah Teen 2001 USA, Olympic torch runner, and teen speaker. There's very few on this planet that can speak to the culture, potential healing, and potential pitfalls of the psychedelic movement like Kole Whitty can. As one of the co-founders of the Condor Approach, she have lived fully on both sides of the coin and know the potential for healing and the potential for harm from these powerful teachers. Kole just felt like a sister from another mother somehow. I don't know. Some people you just resonate with, and I really resonated with some parts of her life stories that I experienced as well, and with how genuine and lovely and warm and caring and responsible she was. I guess I saw lots of myself in her and vice versa. It was just it's kind of like a knowingness. Maybe we have lived different lives together. I don't know. Anyway, she's a cool chick, and you're gonna love this episode. And now, without further ado, on to the show. Hi, Kole. Welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. I'm very blessed to have you here. Thank you for being here and sharing your light with us today.
Hey, we're here for my favorite conversation, so I'm stoked to be here, and I always love where conversations go, so I'm ready.
Awesome. So before we begin, can you share a little bit about your origin story? How did you discover your passion, and what you're doing today?
You know, I think like most entrepreneurs that are working for themselves found themselves not able to work in the conditions they were in. Like health crash or financial crash or relationship crash. Mine was all of the above. And so, yeah, you know, I'm going to do the Cliff's Notes of how I got to the crash. And then we can kind of build on which parts and pieces you want to dig into. But ultimately, you know, my name's Kole Whitty. I now live in Austin, Texas, but I grew up in Utah. And certain childhood experiences caused me to have certain beliefs. I grew up Mormon, LDS, and after being baptized at 8, had some life events happen, assaults on my sexuality that created this internalization of shame that I felt bad, wrong, and broken from 8. And so then that led me into being an at-risk youth, 3 different high schools, didn't graduate from high school, ended up in a coma from a contaminated batch of GHB, which is a substance. And that kicked my story into...
Isn't it growth hormone?
Yeah, kind of. So what it basically is, GHB really kind of first got its start in the fitness field because it helped athletes get into their REM sleep faster, but it shuts your body down. So a bad formulation or too much can kill someone because it can literally shut their system too far down. And then there's risks of vomiting and then people can choke. So there's a lot there. And at 17, I was, you know, kind of part of the rave club scene back then. We're talking late 90s, early 2000. And so that was something that we worked with to come down off of stimulants. It would help you get to sleep so you wouldn't stay up. And obviously recognizing that at 17, I thought, well, this life path isn't going to get me very far, so I need to make some changes. And I decided to do Miss Utah Teen, which is a Miss Teen USA pageant line. So quite a pendulum switch. But the thing was, their focus was on substance abuse education. And I said, well, and I was very honest about, my lived experience to there. And I said, if anyone is going to teach the youth in Utah about some of the dangers of club drugs, like, I feel like I'm a good candidate for that. So then I started speaking for Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the DARE program, and did all these national talk shows and really international shows. The problem was I was still trying to make up for everything I wasn't. I was still trying to make up for that 8-year-old little girl who felt bad and wrong and broken. And so my life was still dedicated.
I'm so sorry you've been through that.
It was a lot,
That sucked.
I mean, look, the beautiful thing is, like many people's story, that is what got me to explore the beautiful things and have the husband and relationship I have now. Yep, exactly. And health crashes as well. And by the time I reached, so at, early 20s, I'm speaking and doing these things, then I recognize that I have some healing I need to do. At 26 is where my health got the worst. I had endometriosis, I'd had an ovarian torsion, hypothyroidism. The list goes on and on and on. And then from my coma, I'd had 3 traumatic brain injuries. So there was a lot in my body. And honestly, that's where I really hit my rock bottom. I was 26. My body was so inflamed. I couldn't take another step in my life. And I, in retrospect, can see it's because I was living my life driven by shame. And even though from the outside it looked like I was doing a lot of great things to contribute, I worked a lot, with animals and foster and in so many places, but my body wasn't okay, and it was in that desperate space that I got introduced to psychedelics for healing, which that was a whole other thing, because I've flipped the pendulum again from being substance abuse educator.
Because you're coming from like drugs are bad,
Yes.
never do drugs. Drugs are an evil force, and you're right. When they are being used in the wrong way, they can be terrible, awful, and just life-shattering.
They certainly can be. They certainly can
Right.
be.
So tell me more.
Well, in essence, so it was at that time, I really had been, I wouldn't say I ever lost my own faith and connection to God and what that meant to me. And at that point, I was just like, show me a sign, I'm willing to do anything. Because I couldn't walk for longer than 3 hours. I went to Disneyland, and that's where I noticed at 26, I can't even walk around a theme park. What if I want to have kids? How would I carry a pregnancy? What's my future going to look like? And in that moment, I said, if this is downhill from here, then I'm not sticking around for 40. And I just turned 40. And so to have that moment of like I made it it's an incredible feeling. And it took just the right friend and just enough signs to lean into really exploring what plant medicine and psychedelics are therapeutically for healing versus for buffering, bypassing, or, trying to not feel, but how to actually get back to feeling, because I was so overwhelmed with feeling or with fear.
Yeah. What were the signs for you?
A lot of it was kind of in my own prayer. There was one friend that hit me up that I was supposed to be staying with in LA. And he said, hey, I know you're coming out here, but we've got this event happening at my house the weekend. You're supposed to come. And with the healing journey you've been on, I'd already started. I'd made big diet and lifestyle changes and lots of other things. So I was on a progressive path. But it was someone that I've trusted for so long that it couldn't have been anyone else in my life. And, he just looked at me and he said, look, I would never put you in any position of danger. And I knew that to be true. And there was just that little voice in my body, or like this little felt sense that just wanted me to listen and not say no right away. Initially, it was a no. But it was like that deeper intuition piece that you just go, okay, I'm nervous. I can also feel that little part of me that wanted to know more. And then it just felt like I couldn't tell you like the exact signs then, but it just felt like so many things really pointed me in that direction for more information.
And what was it? Was it a psychedelic? Did you have an intervention with a shaman? What was it for you?
Yeah, so this one was a group retreat of sorts. And they were working with something called sassafras, which is what MDMA is derived from, but it is the natural plant version of it.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, it's a
Where is it
it's
from?
a serotonin releaser. Sassafras comes from, oh, now I might mess this up. Sassafras grows in the States. It actually goes lots of places. That's not my plant that I particularly work with a lot, but what I can recall. My main two teachers are mushrooms and wachuma, which is a cactus. But sassafras is, I believe it comes from a tree, if I remember correctly. And then how it's processed is how it becomes the sassafras that actually can be taken, and it's a serotogenic, or it works with your serotonin in your body to make you feel happier and more connected. It can have psychedelic effects, but it's not like mushrooms or ayahuasca or some of these other substances that can give you a tremendous amount of visuals, and some people would say like entities or aliens or all sorts of things like that.
So you went there to the retreat and you, I guess, microdosed the sassafras. And what
Not a
happened there?
microdose. Yeah, it was a full experience
Took
dose.
a huge
and-
dose of sassafras.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what huge would be with sassafras, especially when it's this type of extraction, but it was a full experience, and I didn't have really visuals or anything, but it was more, that was the night that I was able to put down the heavy burden of addict that had been placed on me. Because if you come out of substances, the only alternative is kind of the AANA world, where it's once an addict, always an addict. And because I'd been in a coma, I got immediately placed in that category when really that wasn't me. That didn't fit. I was more like a circumstance overdose of a bad formulation versus too much or too often. But I took that label on.
Right. So similar to the thing that almost killed you was the thing that healed you.
Kind of. Yeah, kind of. Because even in my teens, even though I was using substances then versus working with them, it also allowed me to get some support from people in an environment by being able to communicate and talk traumas and things that had happened. It was just not a safe environment, or what they call set and setting is what they refer to it in the psychedelic space, of people that are trained in a healing capacity, whether a shaman or even doctors now, say in Oregon or Colorado, where they can legally work with people in that way.
Yeah, I know that I heard that doctors are starting to use microdosing in their offices.
And so for me in this shamanic work, I think it was a bit more scary because of like my religious upbringing, you know, of like that you would see evil spirits or bad spirits or something like that. And for me, that night, I actually connected to my twin brother who passed when we were in the womb. And my mother used to tell me I talked to him when I was a little baby. She said up until I was like 5, I talked to him all the time. And so I saw him that night. And the other really notable thing was that I realized I wasn't an addict. That was not a label for me, and that I could take that off. I didn't realize how much fear that was making me live in by carrying that label, like, oh, you're always going to be that way. It'd been 6 years, you know, I grew up. I got other tools, I got resources and community, so I wasn't the same person.
Nice. And what took you from that experience to becoming a coach?
Well, so that kicked off about 6 years of my own experience in healing, because there was a lot to heal there. There really was. I had, with all my different medical conditions and lived experience and everything that was going on, I spent 6 years on my own journey, and then I got into health and fitness as a result. So first I was a personal trainer and teaching fitness classes. And then that led me into, as I was helping people improve their life, and I was working with my own like shaman and facilitators, seeing that much of what people were carrying in their body, even if they did all the things right and ate the right diet and, you know, did all the things on paper that were quote unquote right, that sometimes their health still wasn't getting better. And a lot of that was trauma. So then that started getting more people coming to me saying, well, how did you heal your body? Because now I've been off all medication since 2009. I haven't had a laparoscopy or emergency surgeries or anything since then. So people started asking me for support, and that's really what got me more into like officially coaching.
Nice. And how did you choose the medicine that you work with?
I would say it chose me.
How so?
So, yeah, it's kind of like the very wooey way to say it. But in 2016, when my husband and I went down to Peru, we actually were married down at Machu Picchu. And when we were down there, it was Wachuma is kind of like my main teacher, which is a cactus. It's a cousin of peyote, but it still has a hallucinogenic effect, but not like peyote. And in Peru, they cook it down and it's a drink, like a very gelatinous-y type drink. And that allowed me to talk to the different parts of my body. And so it was more that's where I connected with. So if I was having reproductive issues, if I was having certain pain in my body, it allowed me to talk to my body, just close my eyes and kind of go there. Imagine going into my shoulder, imagine going into other parts and work with whatever was stuck, because some of it was trapped emotion that had been there for a long time. And it wasn't chronic pain, it was trapped pain that I hadn't processed.
What does, let's say, talking to your womb look like?
So it could be, exactly as it sounds. My eyes would be closed and I just have my hands on my lower belly and just talking to my body. And first it was, I needed to make up for how I'd treated it, how I spoke to it. So I talked to each part of my body like I would a person that I wanted to start a new relationship with that had not been very positive before. And so I'd talk to, say, my womb or my ovaries or certain parts that were hurting and just say, I'm here to listen. What do you need me to know that you're trying to tell me that I don't understand or I've been ignoring? Because the truth was, my body's been trying to communicate to me my whole life around boundaries, around telling the truth or my truth, speaking up. And when I started to track all my injuries from birth until that point, when I started to look at whether it was surgery or stitches or getting strep throat, and if I looked at the literal function of the body part and what was happening in my life outside of my body, I started to find these trends. Like all the years I got strep throat was at a time when there was things going on in my life I felt like I couldn't tell anyone. So it was all around my throat, communication, truth. And so it was the same with my womb. You know, some of the things that happened when I was a child, I hadn't told anyone, and that shame in the sexual area, sexual organs, plus that's a power center. And so I wasn't able to, as I got into my teens especially, I wasn't able to process some of the things that had happened in the past. And at the same time, I'd get sick because I'm not able to speak up about it. Mm-hmm. And as I started to speak to those parts of my body, sometimes I'd write a letter, not even in a psychedelic experience.
Nice.
I would just write a letter like it was a person and say, look, I'm sorry for all the times I didn't honor you. Wow. You know, maybe in past relationships or in my first marriage where there was intimacy I didn't really want, but I felt obligated or that I should or whatever. And my body wasn't happy. I'd get a urinary tract infection because my body is angry or pissed at me that I'm not honoring, that it's not really what I want. And the more I started to really be with my body that way, then she stopped having to be so loud. Now when we talk, it doesn't have to be so intense.
Thank you for listening. We're good.
Yes.
Wow. Is there a certain message you got from one of your body parts that surprised you, or a certain action that you needed to take that was kind of weird?
The one that came to mind, so I'll just go to that one, that I just didn't expect or surprised me, like you said, was when I'm not feeling financially supported by myself, there was a pain in my middle back that I would get. And I kept going for massage work and chiropractic work, and it would help for a few hours, and then my body would lock up again. And so it was all that I needed to do was acknowledge it, that I wasn't feeling safe. I wasn't feeling financially safe, like I could provide for myself. And that was regardless of whether I was in a relationship with financial support. It was just, I needed to know that I've got my back. And that's something I used to always say is, I need to know I've got my back and you can have me, like you can support me there. And so I was literally getting pain in my back when I wasn't feeling like I had my back and that I could handle things.
Wow, that's incredible. So when your clients come to you, do you coach them to talk to their bodies first, or do you coach them to take mushrooms, or I forgot the name of the cactus that you mentioned?
Yeah, Wachuma is a cactus. Because of the current legal climate, I can't ever coach someone to do substances within the United States, right? But many people choose to. I can coach them in afterwards. What do they do with the realization? So I operate more like a strategist Sherlock Holmes, where it's like they need to track everything for 30 days. So I have a manual, it's called the Condor Approach. It's on Amazon, and they're one a week. And so I have them do that for 30 days. And it's basic questions in the morning and at night and body mapping. So you put little X's on the body. And then at the end of each week, there's reflections. And then at the end of the month, we have all this data. Because for me in particular, or as an example, I didn't know pain-free was possible. I was just trying to get it to, I joke and say, suck less. And so I thought if I could just get my body a bit more relaxed, that would make life beautiful. And so with people, I found as well that when you're trying to sort so many things, and some of it's emotional and some of it's environmental, and, I had breast implants I removed because I wasn't healing well, and I had all these things that as I ticked off each thing off the box, my health kept improving. But you need a lot more information than just what are you eating and are you sleeping? That's only 2 parts. So then that's when someone comes to me, we can look at more of the information. Now I actually teach what we call psychedelic-informed coaching, which is body mapping for coaches whose clients are working with psychedelics. So it's not facilitating them, but it is when they have a big realization, something in their body, what are we going to do next? What is the plan of sorts?
So does your body tell you what to do next, or are you journaling and then you know what to do next? How does it work?
Yeah, it's a combination of both, right? So I believe that everyone has the answer inside of them and that their journey is bio-individual on their life path. So we're talking about, we call it integration. What things in their life have worked for them? What things are not working for them? And then if we need new strategies, we can come up with new strategies. So it's really looking at what's working, what's not, how does the body feel? And when someone tunes in twice a day to their body, they learn pretty quickly. I mean, within 30 days, most people, if they do all of the journaling morning and night, express a radical difference in their body, in how it experiences their life or what it's trying to tell them. So it's really just self-awareness.
Yes. Can you give me examples of some things that happen to your clients with that awareness?
Sure. I mean, and some of them aren't even clients. They just got the book, right? This is the book I created for myself. So I had one guy shoot me a message a couple weeks ago on Instagram that just used our, listened to our podcast and just Instagram and got the book. And in 28 days, he said, in 28 days, I was able to see what was working, check in with my body, and when I would become reactive, notice that I was becoming reactive before it escalated. And that gave me the sovereignty to choose a different path than I might have before. Because I noticed when I start to get angry, my throat starts to close and I start to get hot before I get into the very reactive. And so that nervous system understanding, we see the early cues of reaction, and then getting clear in who you want to be. So my future me, who's already done all the healing, how would that version of me react here? By getting clear in that at the beginning of the book, when you start to track it, you start to recognize like, wow, this is, my body tells me really quickly, like let's say I get on the phone with one client or go to work and my back locks up or I start to get a migraine. When you start to map that out, you start to see trends. And as you start to see trends and understand the impact of the decisions in your day-to-day life, you start to make different decisions. And so it's really just bringing someone self-awareness, whether it's time for them to leave a job they've been talking about forever. Like for my husband, he's a registered nurse of 31 years. And at year like 26, he said, I got to get out of the hospital. I got to get out of the hospital. And then he broke his back at the hospital, which got him out of work.
Out of the hospital, yes.
And so, you know, yeah, it was horrible for him. And if we keep saying, I got to get out of this job, it's usually the health will crash to help us get out of there, because the body only knows survival. And if you say, I can't do this anymore, then the body's like, all right, let me help you, friend. I'll help you get out of this life that will kill you if you stay, but you'll figure it out if we get out of here probably, or if you keep going. So it's ranged from headaches to PCOS to just all sorts of symptoms. It doesn't mean these like conditions go away, but the symptoms lessen so dramatically because the person now is listening and recognizing, wow, there's a lot of places that I'm not being consensual with my body, that I'm working too long, that I'm saying yes to my neighbors to help even when I don't have the energy. Or, you know, I've had people who are recovering and still have active cancer that are still over-giving and not giving their body space to heal. And through that process, that journaling process, you start to really see that.
Wow. How does one start their mushroom journey or psychedelic journey? What does that look like?
Depends on the person. You know, now it's becoming very prevalent in the States. So I feel like it finds you. From a shamanic perspective, they are teachers and spirits that call to you. But I do think that very few people are educated in what questions to ask to make sure they find a safe space for them. Not every substance is for every person. Microdose isn't necessarily great for everyone, nor is higher dose great for everyone. But something like mushrooms overall is quite safe, actually. You can't overdose on mushrooms alone. So, you know, if someone's on medications, there's all these things you want to understand. So I would say a great place to start is looking at, there's some research from maps.org, which stands for the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, so that you understand if you have current like medical conditions, you wanna understand that. There's some medications that can't be mixed. One plant that I really love that's legal everywhere in the States is called Kanna. And there's a company called Ka Empathogenics that I think it's a great place for people to start. You can go to their website and read about it. I can give you a 10% off discount code. But that one is so subtle.
Yes, please. We'll put it in the show notes.
Beautiful. That one is so subtle that between that and just journaling every day, I think that it's a perfect first step, or say 30 days to prepare for your first experience. But overall, you know, there's podcasts and videos. It's, for me, just really empowering people to not give their power away, not to give it to a shaman or a doctor or a facilitator, to ask lots of questions. If they won't answer your questions, it's not your person. Even if your questions are control.
Right. There are also lots of charlatans out there.
For sure.
Or people that went on a hike in Peru and got their shaman certificate within 3 days, and now they're a shaman, and they have no previous experience, and they just do it for the money. Or the people that are teaching them are doing it for the money. What do you know about that world?
Look, you're going to see every version of that across the board, as you do with anything in life. For me, I still do operate overall.
Yes, but this one is very important, because this can, like, doing it in the wrong way, somebody can literally lose their minds.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really, I feel like, a life and death situation when it comes to psychedelics.
It can be. It can be. The thing is, this is why for the person to be educated before they go to any facilitator, just by asking questions of where did they train, how many ceremonies have they sat in, how many have they conducted, what was their, training process, how many people do they put in the space, what's the most they've ever taken. Because the most dangerous circumstances come from facilitators who haven't done very much, and then they work with someone with more complex issues. So for me, this is where it gets dangerous. I believe people have good intentions because they had a beautiful, easy experience. But that does not mean that's how everyone's are. And so I have had times where I've had facilitators calling me who are new, that now they don't know what to do and they're panicking because the person doesn't seem okay. The lack of experience is a problem for sure, which is why for us, education became what we started to focus on. Like, I don't facilitate people anymore. We stepped fully into education because the only way someone can take steps to be safe is to know what to watch for and how they feel about the answer. There's not a right or wrong answer, but it's how do you feel about the answers the person gives you. For me, if someone won't answer all of my questions, I'm out. I don't, you can think that I'm trying to over control or whatever, but if someone won't honor that I have had traumatic circumstances that cause me to not trust people. So if you can't meet me in answering what I would need to feel safe, then you're not my person, right? And I also think many facilitators tout that it's this, you're going to come get a miracle. That's not always the case. Out of 14, 15 years on my path, I had maybe 4 miraculous ceremonies, and the rest were very subtle. And so when someone saves all their money for one psychedelic experience retreat, and I feel this is where it is unethical for a facilitator to take someone's money that actually needs at least a year of therapy in addition to the experience. And so if you take all of their money, that's unethical to me because you're banking and they're banking that they're going to get their one miracle. But as I said, in 15 years, I had 4 out of hundreds of experiences. So statistically, if we just sit there, I don't think that it's fair or appropriate when someone's desperate and that's the only money they have to accept it versus finding another space that's more appropriate for what they do need. Because typically, if someone's financially strapped, they usually need a lot more support than a one retreat weekend. They usually need more community. What's their family life like? And so this is where it's so complex that the most important thing is educating the person to know what questions to ask and that there are other options than what they might be seeing for what they're able to access.
Yeah, the most dangerous thing is when people are in hitting rock bottom and they don't have the confidence, and everybody that is just looking at them looks like they're a savior, and then they go for it. So if somebody's listening, and if you are hitting rock bottom right now, do your research, take the time, listen to my podcast, listen to Kole's podcast, and get yourself educated before you dive in. It's a process. I rather it takes you a year before you come to the decision to go to a ceremony, but you are ready and you did your research and you did the work, and then you get there, or take a coach that will lead you there. Don't just do it unless you know 100% in your heart that you are being called for that. So you said the spirit will call you, or the plant medicine will choose you. What does that look like?
Well, I can really only speak for mine experience, right? Because anything else is only what I've heard. For me, what it felt like being called was in every experience, I was shown how what happened to me was to position me to help be a steward for others. And so it was necessary on my path to understand hurt and pain and desperation and how to get free of that in my physical body, my spiritual body, my emotional body, all of it. And so in each experience, this is where what you talked about with the charlatan or, overnight shamans is they get the call. But for me, the call is only, hey, now is the time to start your study, not now is the time to start facilitating. And so
I like that. Yes.
it's the practice, right? And when someone decides to go to medical school, you have to start doing pre-med. And then you start going and you're doing residency. And, before you're ever released to run your own practice. And that's what a lot of folks don't have. And in some areas of the U.S., they don't have access to it either. And they are figuring it out a different way. But if you're getting the call, that's just the beginning of a lifelong path. And so if I'm looking at someone that says they're a facilitator, if they say they know exactly what they're doing and they know everything, that's who I run from. Because the more I'm in this work, the more I realize I don't know. It's always changing. It's always growing. And that I'm a student of this for the rest of my life. This is the path I'm on. And when I got the call, it was more the fork in the road came and it said, would you like to go this way? And I made the decision to take the first step. So the call is the first step. And then for the person to really be safe and ethical from my model of the world and my cosmology is, all right, so what do I know and what don't I know? I have to start getting clear. If I do want to, or I feel that in the future I'm meant to hold space for people and facilitate them, then I want to know medical contraindications. I'm going to want to get trauma training. I'm going to want to start to get all these things of understanding. So then I can create my own education plan and go study with some elders, maybe in a few different countries. Why do they do what they do, right? To really understand there's so much more to it than just sitting and being with someone. Like for us, we call that a trip sitter. But then you start getting into entities and spiritual cleansing. And as a facilitator, it can impact your own
Tell me
health.
more about that. Entities and spiritual cleansing. What did you come across?
Yeah, so in essence, it wasn't something I necessarily believed in or didn't believe in. And same with past lives and all that before I came into this work. But what I started to notice at one point was after working I have one example. After someone that I had done a private experience for, the nights that followed, I was having nightmares. And it felt like I'd wake up like panicked, like someone was trying to hurt me and all these things. And I met with a curandera down in Ecuador, who's a dear friend and who I trust for more shamanic practices. And for her, as we spoke, she's like, you actually have this person who was looking for you to be their hero is now actually kind of like unconsciously or consciously sending their ancestors, their harm your direction because they blame you that they didn't get their quote unquote healing that they were looking for. And so my energies were open. I didn't do the cleansings I usually do after a ceremony because every substance, and this is again from my experience, opens different, some say portals or dimensions. That's why many people will see past loved ones, or they'll see, aliens, or they'll see whatever. I've kind of heard a lot of different versions. But this one, for me, when it's showing up in the body afterwards, it's because something's attached to me. And after she did some prayers with me, some limpias, which are cleansings in Ecuador, immediately I was able to sleep and everything was cleared and gone. And it took us about 3 days of doing certain prayers. And again, a past version of me would have been afraid of anything like that because I grew up Mormon where that's, that would be like black magic stuff. But in the jungle and especially in the jungle, there's a lot of black magic. There's a lot of, not all shamanism is with a good intention or with a to support you intention. And so I had to really start to learn it.
Can a dark shaman?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can a dark shaman steal energy?
For us, I don't know if it's still so much as if someone's feeling really depleted. If you go work with someone or someone else in this space, there can be, I say like a vampire, you feel drained, like you got hit by a truck. So it's not even that people are consciously doing it. It's more there's so much they don't understand about this work that then they leave the next day, go into a full contracted state where they can't function. They get sick because the body got very depleted from the experience. That's why I don't like large ceremonies. I don't know who's there. And some people are going into ayahuasca ceremonies that are 60, 70, 80 people. And for me,
That's
that
crazy.
is not, it's not my space. I have people that have,
What's a good amount? Is like 10 people good? 10 people a good amount?
for me, it depends on how big the space is too. So for me, 15 or less, I can be pretty comfortable as long as I can get kind of 6 feet in each direction. I'm very sensitive. If someone gets nauseous, I can start purging. And it's just, again, not something I ever thought about. It's that I'm so sensitive empathetically that until I was in ceremony, like there was one time where I didn't feel sick and suddenly I got sick and I looked next to me and this woman's holding her stomach. And she just sat down. I'm like, no, that can't really be a thing. And I got up and just walked away and it faded. And so that whole night I just started like just testing if I went closer to some people, if the sensation changed in my body. And then I started to notice that I lived in New York City at the time. I started to notice that on trains, someone would come on and stand by me and I'd feel instant anxiety just out of nowhere. And that's when I started to develop a deeper understanding that no wonder emotionally was so chaotic in my teens. I was surrounded in a lot of chaos. And for me, it was that I was pulling and experiencing other people's energy. And in this shamanic work, I was able to learn how to protect my energy, which I use every day now. I wear different rocks or crystals or jewelry.
Yeah, I'm similar to you because I'm very empathetic, and I can it feels very familiar what you're talking about. So what type of protection can me or somebody else who's listening do to protect their energy field?
Again, I'm not a shaman, so I can say what I was recommended to me. But if you reach out to Goddess Jocelyn at La Vida Divine Retreats in Ecuador, she's beautiful at that. She's from Ecuador. She's from this is her lineage. But what she had me doing is one, bathing or showering after you've been with people, especially if it's been a lot of people. You can also use flower water. Like I have a spray bottle filled with agua de Florida, which is used a lot in ceremony in South America. And then I put fresh flowers from my land in there. And then some cleansing like quartz crystal, things like that, maybe an obsidian. And I spray it first thing in the mornings, or if I come home, I just spray the spray bottle up in the air and let it kind of just, like rain over me. And I really just imagine anything just like drifting to the front door before I walk in. I believe that the intention and just having a ritual for it. If you've just worked with someone coaching one-on-one, clearing your energy before you work with them and then clearing your energy after you work with them is a really beautiful practice. A lot of therapists have a practice like that because they can feel that they are taking the energy on. Nurses, first responders, having, a way to let it go, let it wash over you. So for me, if I'm doing it more quick, the agua de Florida is how I like to set my office. And when I'm first coming home, I just...
Where can one get one like that?
Amazon.
Yeah.
Like I literally have this...
Amazon?
Yeah. So agua de Florida is just flower water in Spanish.
I love Amazon.
Mm-hmm. And then I put it in a big spray bottle. Like the one that I have is, I don't know how big this is, however many ounces this is. So this is like a 24-ounce bottle, give or take. And I put the agua de Florida inside the spray bottle, and then I fill it with flowers from my property because I always like to integrate where I am with flower water to honor the land where I am and have that a part of like the blessing that I'm home. And then it has little crystals in the bottom as well. And just making your own. You know, this is where you get to integrate what's connected with you so far. If you love rose, if you, certain things, maybe your grandmother loved a certain flower. So you like to put some of those in to call in the energy of your grandmother, things like that. Creating an ancestor altar in your home. So pictures where you put your family, your grandparents. Mine's actually deconstructed. It's usually behind me, but it's deconstructed right now because I just took it for an event. But I have a place to remind me of who I am and what's important to me, and to remind me not to carry other people's things. I'm actually not wearing rings right now, which is not very typical for me. But I also wear things to remind me, like very weighted, heavy jewelry, to help remind me not to carry it. And I might even just shake my body a little bit after being around someone that I feel like just a little weighted down by it, and just kind of remind my body not to carry it.
I love that. What kind of events do you do? Do you do retreats?
We typically do one retreat a year. Last year we did Costa Rica. This year we're going to Tonga. But our medicine of sorts this year in Tonga will be whales. So we're not going to work with any other substances because whales, we're going to be getting in the water with them. So that'll be our experience this year. Next year we'll go to Peru. But now that the focus is in education, we're just doing events that is called psychedelic-informed coaching. So it's people whose clients are working with psychedelics, and they, as a coach, want to understand more about the nervous system, about fawning responses, body mapping. They want to help their clients use body mapping. So it's really more for people that are already coaching, whose clients are working with psychedelics, and they want to understand more how to articulate it, how to help if a client's could be showing signs of like entity attachment. We're not telling you how to release them, but it's helping you to guide them if maybe they're doing it too often, or maybe they're doing too much. The body will tell you.
Nice. What are your 3 top tips to living a stellar life?
My 3 top tips to living a stellar life would be radical honesty, self-honesty, radical self-responsibility, and radical action. Because if you don't first get really honest with yourself and where you are, you can't get to where you want to go. If you don't take responsibility for some of the things you've done, even if it wasn't necessarily pleasant, or taking responsibility to be empowered and change your life, is going to be key. And then the actions in doing it, is just really having grace through those actions.
How do you keep yourself in action?
I have lots of support systems in place. So from friendships to journaling to signing up for classes, the difference now is when I take trainings, it's not to make up for what I'm not. It's in the excitement to learn and grow and play. And so I'm always in something that excites me, because that keeps me in action. Otherwise, I'll get stuck in what I have to do, and that never ends well. I do have things I don't want to do, but as long as I also have something that excites me, that keeps me in action, and that helps me also do the things that maybe aren't as fun.
Well, that's fabulous. Where can people find you, get coaching with you, sign up to your retreats, listen to the podcast?
Yep, definitely love the podcasting. It's probably my favorite. The Psychedelic Coach, we talk a lot about all these different concepts that we've kind of touched on today. And Instagram, if you go to Mr. Kole, Mystikole, I like to have more fun with a lot of my stuff. So you'll see a lot of really silly stuff. So if you take things too seriously, you might not like my page. So be warned, I'm not that serious of a person. Even though I have great intention, I am not that serious. And then our events, if you go to condorapproach.com, you can read about those. We do 3 a year of those.
Right. And your book is available on Amazon.
Yes, and that's the Condor Approach.
The Condor Method, was it?
Yep, and that's available now. I think they're on back order right now for about a month. But it's a great tool.
How can I get one now?
Well, it just launched, and we were not anticipating the growth, which is a beautiful thing. And, we're going to have to figure it out.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. This was a very fascinating conversation, and I enjoyed it tremendously. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Orion, so much for everything you're doing.
Thank you. And thank you, listeners. Remember to have radical self honesty, self responsibility, and take action and have a stellar life. This is Orion. Till next time.